A Rashi this week's parsha, I think, like no other Rashi in the Torah. I can't be sure. Now Rashi all the time Rashi tells us about Smichut Parshio, which means these psukim to teach us a lesson, right? What would be an example? You have the man of war going out and taking the woman, Yifatoa, and then after talks about a Sota ben Sora Mora, he said that kind of marriage could lead to that, So you have that all the time. But this week's Rashi, at the end of Bahar, we have Bahar B'chukosa, this parsha, double parsha. So get ready for that, a double parsha, and listen to the ending. He says, Lo su lachem elilim. He says, Nemru mikros halalu. Afa parshos halalu. All these parsha. Now, when we talk about a parsha, we mean Parshat HaShavua. When Rashi means Parsha, you know what he's talking about? When he says Parsha, it doesn't mean Parshat Bahar B'chukosa. You know what he means?
No.
He means paragraph. Because if you open the Torah, you'll see every few lines there's a space. That's called a Parsha. Sometimes it's a little space called a Parsha Stuma, tiny space. Sometimes it's a bigger space. And that's a Parsha. So in Parshas Bahar, you might have 8 Parshios. In one Parsha, I have 2 Parshios. So Parsha, you have to know what the word Parsha means. Parsha, we mean by Parshat HaShavua. Rashi, Parsha means paragraph. And how do you know what a paragraph is? You open up any Torah and you'll see paragraphs. Long, it could be a pasuk, it could be 5 seconds, it could be 50 seconds, a paragraph. Okay. He says the paragraphs, we use the word paragraph because it's easier. Okay, the paragraphs in our Parshas Behar, Nemru ala Seder, Betchila Hizir al Hashvi'it. It starts off Parshas Behar with the mitzvah of Shemitah, which we'll have in a few years. We're in our cycle now, 3rd, 4th year, and we're making our rounds. Ve'im chamad mamon. Now you're supposed to go ahead and, of course, let your land be free. Put a sign. This is Hefker. Come enjoy. If they could reach it from outside the tree branch is great. If not, let them have access. How to come in to your garden, to go ahead and to your farm, to take the fruits and vegetables, and it's Hefker. Okay? And the person goes ahead and he says, nope. Im chamad mamon v'niskav nechshad al hashviyit. He says, He doesn't like that great American song, this land is my land, this land is your land. He doesn't like the song. He says, land is my land, it's not your land, only mine. And so God's going to give him a potch. And what's the first potch he gives him? He's going to have to sell he's going to run out of money. He's going to have to sell items, sell his table, his books, to make some money. And that's why the next paragraph in the parsha after Shemitah is a person who sells his movable objects. And it took the halach. It's not overcharging, stuff like that. He still doesn't do tshuva and realize it's God's land, it's not my land. He still doesn't do tshuva. So then, Lo chazabo sof malch achuzaso. He has to sell his land, which is more severe than selling a table or books or stuff like that. And that's why the next pasuk is about, the next paragraph about selling one's land. He still doesn't do tshuva, sof mocher es beiso. He's going to sell his house, which is even more hitting home. And that's why the next few pasukim are about what? Selling one's house. Lo chazabo, he doesn't do tshuva. Sof love baribis, he's going to have to borrow money from people. He won't have anything to sell because he sold his property, his movable objects, his property, his home. He's got to stop borrowing. And people are going to take advantage. He's going to borrow baribis with interest. And the next paragraph, of course, is what? Borrowing with an issue of interest. He still doesn't do tshuva, And of course, we're getting more severe, Rashi says, as we're going along. He still doesn't do tshuva. Then he sof moche es atzmo. So he sold his movable objects, sold his land, sold his house, borrowed with interest. He's stuck. He has nowhere to go. No one's lending him anymore. There's nothing to borrow, nothing to sell. He sells himself as an eved, as a slave. Wow. And hopefully he's going to wake up and realize, hey, you know what? Maybe this is all part of a weakness I have. And self-centeredness and gaiva. It's my land. I wasn't willing to share with anyone. And I need to really change my perspective. He still doesn't do tshuva. Then mocha es atzmo. He sells himself, which we saw already. But now he sells himself to a Gentile. So he doesn't have a Jewish owner. He has a Gentile. And that's why the last paragraph in the parsha is about what? An Eved who sold to a Gentile. So Rashi goes ahead and summarizes our whole parsha with all the mini parshiot. He starts off with Shemitah. You don't keep Shemitah to sell your movable objects. You don't do tshuva, then you're going to have to sell your land. You don't do tshuva, you have to sell your house. You don't do tshuva, you have to borrow with interest, which is biting. You don't do tshuva, you have to sell yourself. You don't do tshuva, you have to sell yourself to a guy. 7 mini parshios within the big parsha. So he goes in and lays it all out for us. I don't think there is another parsha in the Torah where Rashi goes ahead and gives us a summary of the whole parsha. He'll tell us these 2 psukim are near these 2 psukim, which is very sweet. This is the whole parsha has a summary. Okay, so it's very nice. It's a memorable Rashi. I think it's unique as far as I know. And now, I'd like to analyze it a bit. You go ahead and you have this person. He worked really hard. He came from nothing, built himself up, and made this beautiful home and land, worked like a dog, and he made it. The American dream, but let's assume he made it, Baruch Hashem, in Israel. And he's here. And he made it big, and he has a bit of an issue, a gaiva issue, where I worked hard and I made it, so you have to do the same thing. You're going to come to me and be a shinara? Sorry. Hear what the Torah says, open up your doors. Nope, they're mine. He's got a serious issue. So the God slaps him again and again, 6 times, right? So if they're not keeping Shemitah, he's going to have to become impoverished, sell his movable objects, his land, his home, borrow with interest, sell himself as a slave, sell himself as a slave to a Gentile. 6 whacks. And he's not going to wake up. A person could just go so low and just not wake up. And there's a 3-letter answer. Yes, absolutely. We are so blinded to ourselves that we could get smacked around and we will always be blaming God, obviously the parents, for what they did to me when I was 4 and 6. They didn't do this, they did that. Always the parents.
Yeah, but you know what? By the same token, you've already become a slave to the outside world, outside of Judaism, and people are doing that to their children. You hear children now online, Jewish children, who are talking about how evil Israel is. They've lost, and you can blame whoever you want to, but they gave up everything.
Correct.
They gave up everything, and they're giving up their children.
Yeah, I hear. So this is human nature, and a person could go ahead and be stuck in his ways. You can have extreme cases, Saddam Hussein, where they were threatening him, 20 or however many years ago, that we're going to come. You have to open up your doors for so we could check if you have any nukes or anything. No, you're not coming into my land. And we ended up going in there. We didn't find anything. There's a bit of a busha on America's part, but it was crazy on his part. Like, hey, don't you see you're going to be destroyed? And just whatever, just blind. And he was found hiding in a hole with dogs found. It was sick. But we could just get so crazed, and not only an insane human being like him, but even us. We get fixed in our ways. Now, I don't want anyone to take this wrong. I took an article, Hamadiyah, and I don't want anyone to take it wrong to not attack Dafka on Hamadiyah and Charaidi. This is just showing how people get so lost in their views Okay, and this is to me an example. So unity, words, just words. This is in the Hamodia Insight, Pashas Achrei Mos. So Kedoshim, right? So just 2 weeks ago, and he writes that Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaAtzmaut, a few weeks, everyone's talking about Israel and the accomplishments and all that we've done, and Achdus, unity, Achdus. And they're saying, the article here is editorial saying, and yeah, Achdus, baloney, it's nonsense. Your talk is so cheap. Why? And everyone was talking, Herzog, the president, about Achdus, and look what you're doing to us, the Haredi world, because everyone's attacking us because of the army issue. So he says, everyone exalted the achievements of the state in every field: military strength, security, scientific research, academia, music, dance, sports, art, Kohen teachers, celebrating everything, gourmet cuisine to street food. And one thing, of course, was not mentioned, or even hinted at, is the what? The people learning Torah. So that's definitely something to look into. I guess I'd look into. Of course, you have plenty of people learning Torah in the heads of the world, where the Torah and nothing to do with people learning not going to the army. So it's important, and that's a good point. You know, the state of Israel should be something that we're proud of. Okay, but the form of Torah in the Haredi world, the peace speakers are not happy with that, because they feel that it's not a proper balance. It's not a balance. That's what they maintain, the speakers. They're not going to be praising you sitting and learning in Kol. They're not. Okay, that's not the Shita. Okay, but he goes on. Perhaps, so why wasn't anyone mentioning that? So he says, maybe it's ignorance, or perhaps it was all too deliberate, because they wish it did not exist, chas v'shalom. They oppose Torah learning and those who learn it. They want to uproot the Bnei Torah from the Beis Medrash and force them to become just like them. Now wait a second. Without getting into the different sides here, is that what the army and the government and all the people that are 600 days in Gaza saying? No. We want you to come into the army and become not firm? That's what they're doing. No. So they tried for 30 years to set up different kinds of Haredi units. There's been a whole massive Hashmonaim unit, which is all Haredi, and they're always looking to improve and keep it to the standard that would work for Haredim, but there's resistance from the Haredi world for a whole bunch of reasons. And for him, or whoever is writing this article, it doesn't say, it was just editorial, right? So, in my opinion, you're very much stuck in your ways not to see that way. This is not just trying to uproot Torah. And I've heard millions of times the claim, we know the early Zionists, what they do to the Taimani Jews. The Taimani Jews came with a 2,000-year Masorah from Yemen, which we used to have good associations with, but I don't have good warm, fuzzy feelings when I think of Yemen anymore. I don't know why. Just anyways, so, but they've had a great Masorah 2,000 years in Yemen. Then they came here, and what the early Zionists do? They cut off their payout. Now, how much was really done? How much did they destroy them? It's not simple. You speak to Haredim, they'll number 18 million Teimanim that they destroyed. And you speak to some, Zionists, nothing, not even one. You want to do real research, a few years ago, they declassified documents on the 40s, 50s, 60s, what happened to them. It's a few 100,000 pages. And I go, look, I think it's Pasha Day. There were some rotten things that went on there with the Teimanim. To the extent that the anti-Zionist claim, I doubt it. Totally pure, I doubt that as well. There were some nasty people. No shilas about it. But, I just want to finish at one point. But now, that's all they want to do is uproot you from learning Torah. That's their whole goal. Nothing to do with the fact that they don't want to be 500 days straight, losing their friends, their lives, their limbs, and their parnasa and their families. And they just want to try to do what? Distribute it. You can't hear that. And the answer is no, they can't hear it. They don't want to hear it. And whoever's writing this is good. I don't know the names, so I'm not going to be specific. But to me, this is a blindness. I'm not even saying, so Danny Meyer says Haredim should go in the army. I'm not even taking that position, yes or no. But to not even hear where the other side's coming from, and just take the old message, they just look at Torah from us. Oh, really? So the Dati Leumi units, the Hesder units, that saying they can no longer have a Hesder setup where they learn 2-3 years? They're trying to stop that? No. They are proud of the Hesder units where they split the time. They're not trying to change it. They want to keep that. They just don't like this setup. So at least acknowledge it. You want to go and say, okay, I understand they want to even out the manpower more, but just I'm not willing to. Okay, that you could, yeah, at least you're acknowledging the other position. Yeah, I'm acknowledging it. Looking to uproot Torah Judaism, but you're so fixed on this for 75 years. I think the reason many Haredim speak this way, I could be wrong, is because it's an unbelievable shock. It's one thing in 1903 to come along in 1903, and Herzl is picking up steam with his 1897 World Zionist Congress. He's making a huge splash, and now the Dati have to figure, what are we going to do? We, the Datiim, didn't do anything close to what he's doing. He's created a world movement. All we did was enjoy the 5 towns and Russia. Maybe Russia not so much, but wherever we enjoyed our religious freedom, America and Spain and Iran, and we had centuries of freedom. We spoke about L'Shana Bab Yerushalayim. We didn't mean a thing that we said. And all of a sudden, a non-frum guy started a movement dwarfing anything we've done. What do we do with that? So the Mizrahi formed and said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to join. And we're going to try to bring Torah to this movement. But this is a force. We need to harness it. The Charaidi of Rav Chana Weissman said, stay away. This is evil. And nothing could come out of it. And it turned out in 48, it seems like God decided in favor that this movement has power. And yeah, work with it. But what are you going to say? That they were wrong? So my answer is, yeah, they're wrong. But who's going to admit that so quickly? That the whole thing was wrong? Not so easy to admit it. So you're just going to keep holding on. That just like in 1903, he said the Zionist movement is bad, you can't join it. So too now, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. Oh, you see what they did to the Jews, uproot Judaism, and staying the same thing. And I'm sorry to put a group down, but it's like this person who is so fixed in his ways, you just can't see there's a reality out there. And maybe change your mind a little bit. See? Maybe they're not evil, just look, maybe they just want to have a little bit of shared responsibility in this area. You can't hear that possibility? Nope. Can't. They can, but they're not choosing well, in my opinion. I'm not even getting into the final psak one way or another. I happen to make that at this point, it should be evenly split. It's not a fair distribution, but that's not even my point. My point is to be able to hear. And then from the other side, because my goal here is not to just attack this group or that group, because I'll say the same thing, see the clock, same thing in the Dati Leumi world. The Dati Leumi world in the 1900s and then 48 were ecstatic. And we're going to join in this endeavor. How many Dati Leumi then and now are so rah-rah about the army, and right from high school are going right into the army, and the comparison is not exact, but if we want to create a ratio, going from high school in America right to Rutgers or Binghamton or Maryland, it's not the same, but from a spiritual standpoint, it might be comparable, going right from high school in Israel to where? The army, without going through what? The yeshiva. And how many kids that keep us off in the Dati Leumi world? And sometimes we're so gung-ho about, Dati Leumi and the army, and wait, but what about the Dati part? Don't you realize if you don't go in a Torah has that type of program, there's a good chance. And I think there's a blindness there too, to realize we have to navigate this very, very carefully. So my goal is not to bash this world, that world, bash anyone who's, I think, similar to this parsha, where we could be so fixed on something that we can miss the full picture. And we could get bashed and bashed and bashed. And the number of kids in the Dati Leumi world who are growing up and going off the derech is huge. It's huge. And everyone should be noting that. And like, oh my gosh, I got to make sure my kid's going to get into a Hesder mode. How am I going to do that? Wait, which high schools are saying the Hesder? Let me see statistics of high schools that graduates who stays firm. We got to work on this. This is serious. So I think those are national examples that I gave of what I consider to be the Parashas Bahar Machala, the plague of Bahar, where Rashi is describing a person who could get whacked and just not see it. And I think it's not a far-fetched case. I gave two national examples where I think this article is off. And they're just so fixed. Zionists, evil, uproot Torah Judaism, that's all they want to do. And now they're coming after me. I'm just not able to see anything else. On the other hand, the rah, be careful too. Zionism, follow me, and these guys are the salt of the earth, which I agree. The holiest of our boys giving up their lives literally for us, the holiest. But I'd like them to stay holy with the kippah on. With the kippah. And there is a derech with tremendous success. It is the Hesder world. There's different kinds of yeshivas. There's three at least. There's more, but three that I'll mention. There is the Mechinot program, Yeshiva Mechina Kedam Tzva'it, where you go learn for a year or two, and then you go to the army, but you're spiritually prepared, and then you have your yeshiva to always go back and visit, and you're connected. It's a more serious program, some less serious programs. Then you have a Hesder program, where you do 5 years, and you split within the 5 years, army and learning, army. And then you have Yeshiva Gavoha, where you can go learn like in Merkaz Rav, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and then you do your army service. Not a set Hesder, set up. It leaves it up to you. This guy's learning 24/7, so he's going to keep learning for 7, 8 years. He might have a few kids. Then he's going to go to the army, but he's anchored in Torah and mitzvos. So anyone that's in the world and sees, this one, I don't know if that one, I don't know if the death, oh my gosh, we got to think this through. I don't want that to have my kids. I'm so proud they're going to serve in the army, but I'm not without a kippah. We have to figure out what we're going to do about this. And so you have 3 choices. You have to figure out which one, but they're all Torah. And once you're connected to a yeshiva, you're connected for life. You go back and you connect with your Rebbe. You have an ogen, your anchor, your religious anchor, so that when you're pulled with all the stuff that can go in the army. So first of all, you have your anchor. And second, if you go in a Hesder unit, you're going into the army with whom? With your guys. My nephew just in Yeshiva Kotel from Boston. He drafted from Yeshiva Kotel. He's with 30 Hesder guys. Minyan, davening, Birkas Hamazon, Shirim, the whole works. Okay, so everyone has to wake up. And that's national issues. And then, of course, each one of us. Each one of us an individual, you have to see, does any of us have the Shemitah, Bahar, whatever you want to call it, Machala, where we have something that's been plaguing us for life. And I always bump into people. And I'm amazing at how pointing out he's a problem. Everyone's a problem. Maybe there's something here, my personality I got to work on. And maybe there's something here. And not always outside. So that, I think, is the Bahar message. And I think we need to do a lot of work. Yes, Lori, sorry about that.
I wanted to say to you, my husband has had...
Great man.
Yeah, we had, on his side of the family, is all Charaidi, for the most part. And if you've ever heard of, I know you heard of Rav Scheinberger,
sure,
and Rav Man, and a whole bunch of Rav Mans. And it's interesting, when I spoke to them about this topic one time, Rav Moshe Man